255 rushing yards against the Los Angeles Rams on Sunday Night Football. It was another phenomenal performance for him, which now puts him over a career high in rushing 11 games into the season. Wild. We got 5 more games for Saquon Barkley. No, we got, 6 more games for Saquon Barkley? Just an incredible season for Saquon. He's at the top of the rushing list. He leads the NFL in rushing. He's now overtaken Derrick Henry with almost 1,400 rushing yards. He's second in rushing touchdowns. And more importantly, I think for him, he would tell you, the Eagles are flying. This is a team that's right on the heels of the Detroit Lions in terms of the number 1 seed in the NFC. And I'm not going to lie, I was a little bit worried about the Philadelphia Eagles. Certainly the way that last year ended, they really came crashing down pretty hard. This year, they start out a little bit better, but man, it looked like, okay, well, outside of Saquon, is it too boom or bust here? And now we're seeing that, like Chris Collinsworth said on the Sunday Night Football broadcast, feels like the Golden State Warriors. It's threes and layups. The layups are you get to hand it off to Saquon and it's a free 2 points because he's just running wild. And the threes are obviously the deep passes to A.J. Brown. And when that offense is cooking, man, you're putting up a ton of points and you got the potential to win a lot of championships like Golden State did when they had the right players. So when you watch Saquon Barkley, and obviously we watch these players through a trenches lens as well, the Eagles have one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. How much of this is, whoa, hold on, like this is the Eagles offensive line really setting things up for him versus what Saquon is able to do, in your opinion?
I do think it's a combination of both, which I know is a cop-out, but I think the thing with them this year is they don't have the same floor that the great Eagles lines had in the past, right? I think they have all the high-end upside plays, and you can see them pop explosives for Saquon, and they've definitely got better as the year has gone along. I was laughing as you were just reading Saquon's numbers because they spent 8 weeks of the season essentially burning apart the first quarter. They couldn't move the ball in the first quarter of games for 8 weeks. They were 31st in EPA per play in the first quarter of games in the 8 weeks of the season. So he's put up a lot of that production in not only a short amount of time in weeks, but just in a short amount of game time. It's like he's had way fewer reps to even be able to get near those figures. It's just been an absurd season. But I think the line has certainly coalesced, and Mailata coming back, I think, again, lifts them back into being one of the best in the league. But they did have struggles early in the season. They had a lot of struggle with trying to blend, okay, what is the right combination of actual things we can run with these guys' skill sets? Where do they overlap? Where do they kind of take away from one another? They were really predictable in the run game at times because of certain things they were doing. And so that was nothing to do with like the line helping them outside of driving people off the ball somewhat consistently, though not as consistent as you would like. It was Saquon going and getting his own buckets an awful lot of the time. And they've just reached a point now where even when they block things poorly, even if it's a disaster play, he's able to make them either net negatives or fine plays. And then when they block it well enough, they're really good plays. And then when it's blocked perfectly, these are just like the most explosive runs we've ever seen anyone have. I mean, the juice, the wiggle, the stop-start speed, making people miss in space also as a receiving threat. He is just, I think, the most electric athlete we have in the league right now. And they have the ability to both grind out yards and then do fun stuff in the run game to try and punish people. And I thought they attacked the Rams really, really well. They just made their linebackers play flat-footed the entire game with the RPO world. They massively increased how much they pull and moved individual players. They've done a way better job as a staff of changing what they're doing in the pulling and moving world to kind of maximize that stuff. And Saquon's the beneficiary. He is making them look better by not having dud plays, and then they're elevating him by getting him up to the second level pretty cleanly on a consistent basis now.
I 100% think that Saquon Barkley should be in the MVP conversation. Now, is he going to win it? I don't know. But when you talk about running back value, I think you have to look at, obviously, what he means to this Philadelphia Eagles offense. And he is, in my opinion, the engine. He's not everything. He might not even be like the largest potential piece, but how he is playing is changing how the Philadelphia Eagles are playing offense, and it's one of the best offenses in the NFL. Nobody's really been able to stop it cold when things are working appropriately, when they've had A.J. Brown fully healthy, when they've had their receivers fully healthy, when they've had the right offensive line out there, and when they've had Saquon. The game plan that they have when Saquon Barkley is out there is obviously one that is not only a completely playoff caliber offense, but now in contention. Now we're talking about them potentially getting the 1 seed and totally turning things around after a really big, I think, disaster of a season last year. So with Barkley, you look at a lot of his efficiency numbers, and they're fantastic. So right now he is, I'm looking at this now in front of me, he's number 2 in terms of PFF WAR in the NFL as a running back. He's right behind Bijan Robinson because Bijan's doing a little bit more in the passing game, and that's pretty heavily weighed. But, when you talk about like what's Saquon versus his offensive line, Saquon is second in the NFL in yards after contact. And when it comes to a yards after contact average, it's also very high. He is still top 10 in the NFL. He's 7th in the NFL for running backs that have had at least 100 carries in yards after contact. So that's a really good metric that we use to say, like, all right, well, if you get hit in the backfield and you keep running, like, that's you. If you don't get hit in the backfield, yards before contact, it's fantastic for the offensive line. And he also has a heavy yards before contact average, but he supplements that. It's not like the yards before contact average is fantastic and the yards after contact average is bad. Both are good, which shows that it's not a total cop-out answer from you to say that the Eagles' offensive line is good, but Saquon Barkley is also good. When I was watching, in particular, that game against the Rams, you're looking for specific moments. You're not necessarily looking for the biggest runs because sometimes those aren't the moments that you're looking for. I looked at every single carry that he had against the Rams, and there are those moments where it's blocked up the way that you want it to be blocked up, but then you still need the player and his ability to put his foot in the ground and shift a certain way behind like an inside zone play, or even like having the patience behind a pulling power play or something. Obviously, like when you're doing outside zone, understanding your aiming points and understanding your rush lanes that could open up and the cutbacks and the potential that they have. Like his vision behind the offensive line is fantastic. And then there were those moments when you talked about the floor of the Eagles' offensive line being a little bit lower than it has been in years past. There were a couple of plays against the Rams in particular where somebody got beat. Like one player got beat, whether it was the center or the guard, maybe one of the tackles. They just got beat a little bit, and somebody is able to, hit one of their shoulders or shoot the gap or something, and they're in the backfield sooner than you would prefer. And Saquon has that ability to just make that guy miss immediately and put his foot in the ground, and now he's to the outside, and now he's going to exactly where that defensive lineman should have been, and that's an open hole for him to get up and find more green grass. So I think that no matter what you look at with Saquon Barkley, his numbers are fantastic for just like raw numbers when you're looking at total output, but they're also phenomenal when it comes to efficiency and then from a wider scope, what he means to this offense. If they did not have Saquon Barkley, like if you replace Saquon Barkley with even a like good NFL running back, this Eagles team isn't the same. They need him to be this good because of how important it is for their offense. And very clearly, it's a very tough offense for any team to stop any given week. It's because of how much attention he garners. It's because of his individual statistics outside of his offensive line success, and then pairing that with what the Eagles can do in the deep passing game when everybody kind of creeps up, and then you got one of the best deep catching receivers in the NFL in A.J. Brown. So to me, the stats alone could probably put him in the MVP conversation, but where I actually get sold is when you think about what he means to this offense, the structure, and the success that they have overall. I think that he is absolutely worthy of that MVP conversation.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, look, when the Eagles offense is rolling, when any offense is rolling, everything is about layering what you want to do, essentially. And it starts with run game to the RPO world. Do they look the same? Okay, does our play action shot world look the same as our run game? Then is our deep passing game tied to the same formations as we get to in the run game, right? Using the run game as a trigger to get to the explosive pass game. That's how most offensive staffs view things these days. Well, the first brick, as you try to build it out, is the run game has to be effective. You got to make people want to either have to put extra bodies down there or be so fearful of the run game that they have to change what they're doing coverage-wise to make sure they can fit it appropriately. It only works if the first layer is good, and Saquon is just the best player in the league right now. It's him and it's Derek. Really getting through and rolling in the first layer of the game in the run game. And so to me, yeah, they just would not be the same. It would look way more like last season, right? If the floor of the offensive line isn't as high, it would be way more boom and bust in the sense of having, okay, sometimes our run game just breaks down on given weeks, and so we got to become just a shot play offense. I think it would look the same. The fact they have a little bit more fluidity between what they're trying to do this season is chiefly because of him. And my favorite thing when I watch him, he's got this like really unusual, unique sense of like these no-look runs where you mentioned before when things are blocked blocked properly? And then can he go and feel and figure it out? And does he have the vision to do that? He has such next level vision. He will just bail on a ball on what the design of a run is supposed to be, even if it's blocked pretty well, because he can sense, I can turn what would be a well-blocked 3-yard run into a 22-yard thing if I just rip this out the back door. And the coaching point nowhere says, go rip that out the back door, Saquon Barkley. But he's so explosive, has such great feel for the game, is so intelligent that he can go and make those things happen on his own. There's just no one else doing it like that. Even the great runners, people who've had excellent seasons, Joe Mixon, I mentioned Derrick Henry, it is still outside of when they get to the second level, right? And it becomes, do I have the wiggle? Do I have the burst? Do I have the strength to go make my own plays? They're still following the blocking mechanics. Saquon can do all that stuff and then just go and make his own plays happen on his own, like he's an off-script creating quarterback. That to me is where the real extra value comes in. Is that one, he can just run your base offense as well as anyone. And then there's all this upside of when he can just go and make explosives happen that should never have happened. If you just lay down the run concept versus how the run was fitted up, should never, ever be turned into a run for more than 4 or 5 yards. And yet he's able to turn those things into huge gains.
So the Eagles' schedule moving forward is 6 games that they have left here. They're in Baltimore next week. And then they host the Panthers, host the Steelers, to the Commanders, host the Cowboys, and then they host the Giants. That's a pretty dang good setup for him to finish with. I mean, I don't want to put unrealistic expectations on him, but he's almost at 1,400 yards. I mean, like, we're talking about him being able to threaten a 2,000-yard rushing season still. That would be incredible if he got to that mark, 600 rushing yards over the next 6 games. But the Ravens defense, obviously, I think is pretty stout. The Panthers' defensive line, it's better as of late, but it's still the Panthers' defensive line, all due respect. Steelers' defensive line, okay, that's a tough game. If you get over 100 yards against the Steelers' rush game, or the rush defense, that would be a hell of a performance. Commanders, I think they could play well on the defensive line, so maybe you get limited there. But Cowboys run defense, not good to end the season. And then the Giants, I mean, like the ultimate, another revenge game here against the Giants, and he played well in the first one. So I think that it crazy to say that a 2,000-yard season is still possible. I think realistically 1,800 to 1,900 yards, but man, what an unreal season that would be for Saquon Barkley. But to me, that sets up for a pretty good last 6 games for him to really stack up that MVP debate.
I mean, those final 2 weeks, he could have 500 all-purpose yards for those final 2 weeks. I mean, that could be if they still are, fighting for seeding and they're gonna play him every snap. That is like hit every single over known to man. Those 2 weeks, that could be outrageous.
Could be tough. We'll see. It's been an incredible campaign from Saquon so far, and it's one that we're going to continue to watch because I think that he should be right in the middle of that MVP conversation. Thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure you like and subscribe the video. And if you don't have a PFF Plus subscription, you can get one to see all the premium stats that we talked about here on the show, plus the expert betting and fantasy advice over at subscribe.pff.com. The description is also right below, so if you are not a PFF Plus subscriber, you can become one today.